and welcome again to A Single Window. So today, we're going to start with a little bit of a review. So the other day we were talking about these people's definitions of the sort of nebulous concept of love. So as we kind of oriented on a continuum here, we can kind of get an idea if we go through kind of the main premise of each person's position. So the physicist said it's kind of within one person and it's oriented to survival. So I think this is a good time to illustrate the point here of when people that are in this mode, so the boxed kind of mode, it's usually an external situation. So they're an individual within this, and they're sort of externally orienting their reality. They're looking outside of themselves in order to kind of make sense of the way things are. And then our next person here was the psychotherapist, and she said individual needs and needs are getting them from others is what love is really about. And of course I'm paraphrasing, but I think that was the main tenet. And then our philosopher said that it's two people investing in each other. And then our romantic novelist that it's a universal story of everyone trying to complete oneself. And then the nun said that the whole universe or humanity under God. So you reinforce your position as equal below, and all is sort of the same. So I hope we can kind of see that as we were talking about from one and an individual's experience, and then getting from outward appearance, and then right here we kind of switch a little bit. I wouldn't say this is completely the circle side, but it's leaning towards this sort of two people investing in each other. This is a universal, and it's really about the interconnection rather than the individual, where the other two are kind of about the individual. And this one, the same thing, the universal story of everyone trying to complete themselves. And like she said, it's more of the moment of consummation that happens when we think we want something, or we think that the person that we're trying to get into our lives is going to really be that missing piece. And it's kind of like the attractive force of a magnet. As soon as they're together, though, it's kind of gone. It just becomes one thing, and then it's not really. But it's more of that attraction at the last moment is where we really get that sense. And as a romantic novelist, she really has to play on that tension of the last moment before it's consummated. And then I think the nun is quite a bit different than the rest. Very unique. I would say that these four people, so I know we're kind of doing this on a continuum, but I'd say these four people are kind of doing it on another level than she is. And I'm not saying that one level is better than the other, but I think these are distinct levels. And we can really see this concept of wholeness in the circle. Think about people in history like the Knights of the Round Table, and that was supposed to be a representation of equality amongst them. And usually the shapes in nature are related to circles as well. So this sort of universality below God, that everybody is one within it, is very in the sort of same idea frame as would be the circle here in this case. Okay, so we have this first picture here to help illustrate what our point is. So today we are very polarized, one side or the other. I wouldn't say those definitions of love were so polarized, there was kind of a continuum between them, but there's a lot of things in the world that we sort of are one extreme or the other. And a good way to kind of exemplify this, and I think this is a positive way that there's sort of an extreme, is Picasso's Guernica. So if we look at this painting, we see nothing that's actually really realistic. We can't kind of attach our own empathy to one specific character in it, or what is happening to one position. Maybe say if this was a really realistic painting, we could see just one person, and maybe we relate our personal selves to that situation. This is a more holistic feel. So if you look at the painting, you see it's chaos, and it gives you that feeling of sort of people going through this torturous experience, and the chaos that ensues during that time. And it really needs to be seen in order to appreciate it. all at once. And it's such a big painting in actuality. This is obviously a reproduction of it, but it's a big painting. And if you look at it from the back, you really get this feel of just all overwhelming emotion in it. And that was what I believe to be his kind of intention in the situation. But if we look at this from the perspective of the sort of square side, the logical, classical side, they see this kind of stuff as frivolous, irrational, erratic, uh, and just the people on this side generally as sort of pleasure seeking and shallow. And even if we go to the really negative extreme of it, some people see them sort of as parasitic, like almost like they're taking advantage of the situation, and they're not rationally involved in the real world where they're trying to make a contribution on a personal level. So that's kind of how the one side or the classical side perceives the other side. So extending our example with sort of art, we could take, this is not usually the one I use to represent this side. There's some people that are very good, realistic artists. And this was at one time, especially during the time before photography, where this was a big deal. Like obviously you could have the fruit, but there are some things that you just couldn't reproduce, like say a portrait. And to have it as accurate as possible was really important to people. So if we're looking at this from the other side, though, I mean, it's a bowl of fruit. If we look at it from the sort of romantic surface appeal, I mean, yeah, it's impressive that they could do this, but that's not really that big of a deal. They sort of see it as dull and awkward, and sometimes they even see, so like if say if it's a schematica of engineering, it's just sort of ugly and awkward, and then it's kind of this oppressive, just boring. They don't really understand the emotion that something like the last painting could pull out of the situation. So they both, if they're in the two extremes, they really see each other quite negatively because they can't understand what they're trying to get across. They're not looking for the same things, and they're also not representing things to defend their position in the same way. And art's a great example of that. So where did this change? There was almost a specific spot in history where this is kind of started going the opposite way. So for most of the time in history, the circle was the sort of dominant mode of thought, and usually related to sort of spiritual needs of the culture. Those were pretty paramount in most cultures through time. I think we can kind of see the exact moment where that changed. Socrates and Plato kind of led a revolution in thinking, and before them, the Greeks were generally known as lovers of beauty, and that's the way they wanted to be perceived. Uh, they were people that could create beautiful things. They were people that did beautiful things, and they were always kind of trying to achieve the best, trying to do things really well. And a lot of times they'd honor, it seemed like, especially in the early years, Apollo a lot more than they did Athena. He was a young man, and the Greeks, if you know much about the Greeks, they were obsessed with young men and male beauty throughout their sort of earlier years, especially. They also liked Athena, and Athena was very important for many of the heroes that came throughout time. But it seemed like Apollo was very, very important. When this changed was the Trojan War. And the Trojan War, what we probably know a little bit about at least, the gods kind of took sides. And the winner was the sort of the Hellas Greeks rather than the ones that were in present day Turkey. And they were helped by Athena. And the ones that lost, so the Greek state was broken up, and the ones that lost were sort of their main god was Apollo. And there seemed to be a very clear divide of when Apollo became a less prominent god. And this is far before Plato and Socrates, but I think it set the stage for it. So Plato and Socrates, we'll kind of use them as together because this analogy was done as Socrates speaking, but it's Plato writing, so it's hard to know where one ended and where the other one began. The analogy they gave was of a charioteer with two horses. So we can kind of see in this example of how they perceived the both sides that they started devaluing this side. So if we talk about the horse on the circle side, the black horse, Plato and Socrates called it obstinate, crooked and lumbering animal, insolent and prideful, shag-eared and dead-looking, doesn't respond to the whip or the spear, so it won't be controlled. We can kind of see the square side's arguments towards the circle side and what they're talking about here. And he was saying that the goal of everybody is to try to, these horses are supposed to be winged, is to try to get to heaven, basically. And people are trying to make this ascent through sort of these mental hierarchies throughout to try to get more and more better and to evolve their thought. And this animal on the circle side is working against that, is what Plato and Socrates said. So this animal is not helping. He's fighting the situation. And they say that he's only likes to be fed and just living off the world kind of thing, and just doesn't seem to be interested in long-term goals. When they talked about the white horse, it was quite different. They talked about it was noble, had honor, modesty, temperance, needs no touch of the whip, but is guided by word and admonition only. So meaning that this is the one that follows rules. And I think that's pretty true about, if anybody wants to kind of talk about these two characters as me as a teacher, I would say that the ones that are the easier to control are probably these ones, rather than the artistic crowd, because it seems like a lot of times that's a little more, and not to say that it's a bad thing at all, but that's typically the way it works. So the outcome of this is that this side is kind of not seen as important. The horse it's supposed to be helping, both of them are supposed to be helping. The horse that is on the one side is working against you. So you should be kind of ignoring that horse. But the problem is that these two horses are chained. So they're fighting against each other always. And they can't be separated. You can't just get on and ride the one horse. Well, I mean, you could say, if we were looking at this metaphorically, that somebody is riding the one horse and looking at the other horse like it's just causing them trouble. So by the time Aristotle was Plato's, I think Socrates had died by the time that Aristotle was kind of at least a student. Aristotle's went from the lovers of beauty, which was this side, to the rational animal. So the only thing that made humans any distinct was rationality, was the ability to logically work through things. And I don't think there's any more of a telltale sign that this became the more dominant worldview at that point. Okay, so I kind of know that I'm beating a dead horse at this point. What is the point? The point is that we keep going to these two schools, and these schools have sort of these fences built between them. And in actuality, everybody wants control of the central. We'll relate this to power. So everybody wants control in the middle of the city of the most powerful place. And it seems to be controlled by one side or the other. So either the square side or the circle side seems to be the main one in control of society. And then what happens is they're representing something very important, but they're not, it doesn't seem like matter what side it is, they're always bad managing their own power and managing their own hierarchy system that seems to get corrupt after a while, no matter what side it is. I think it's fair to say that both sides have positive and negatives, and that either one with power seems to be going the negative way eventually. And then what we do instead of, when, like, say one side goes into the other side, they come in here and they just burn all the buildings. So there was good things here too, but they seem to just want to burn all the buildings and then build over top of them. kind of forgetting what was lost when they got rid of what they thought was bad. And it's kind of this baby out with the bathwater situation where we lose the good. So we'll look at Robert Frost. I've seen a couple people give different associations with this. So Robert Frost is kind of thought of as one of the people that said this, and I've also seen it as an African proverb too. But don't ever take down a fence until you know why it was put up. We're so angry when we try to take back the control, the power in the situation, that we kick down all these fences, and we don't know why they're put up. So there could be a little animal fence in here, and there could be an animal inside of it. And that little animal that we think, oh, why are they keeping it? This is a prison for him. We shouldn't want this. And then letting it loose, and maybe it's a rabid animal. We have no idea. But we just seem to want to take down the old structure and build on top of it based on what we feel like we've been repressed. Because when the other side is in control, they usually downplay the strengths of the other side. So it's important that we really see this holistically for this reason. Einstein's going to help us make our point here. Some of these quotes are debatable, whether he actually said them, especially this one. But this one I'm 100% sure about. And this one I'm pretty sure about as well. But Einstein knew the importance of both of these. So he said the supreme task of the physicist is to arrive at those universal elementary laws from which the cosmos can be built up on pure deduction. So deduction meaning we have these things that we know is true that are always true, and then we can base our understanding on those things that we are always going to be true, which is quite difficult, I would say, but that's what his position is. He said that there's no logical path to these laws, so you can't use the square side. Only intuition resting upon sympathetic understanding of experience can reach them. So that's as clear as you can be as far as using both sides. The intuition is a sacred gift. The rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. So again, very clear that he thinks both sides are important. And this is kind of a direct attack sort of on our thinking today. And then next one is science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. So like I say, usually people relate that circle one to religion, and he's saying that both are needed. I know I'm repeating this quite a bit, but he's a strong advocate of the position I'm trying to make. So, and he also has a lot of respect in many communities, so that's why I want to use him so much. And he's not isolated in these beliefs, especially all the major world-rattling, world-shaking kind of scientists both understood the importance of both sides. So Newton, I mean, you can't say much more about what he's done for physics, especially, and algebra, I guess you could say. But he wrote a lot about religion, and he often would do stuff with alchemy. We've already talked a little bit about alchemy, and I think those are both important to the way he thought. Same with Copernicus here, and I just have a picture of electricity to remind me of two. There was Edison and of course Tesla, that both, and you can definitely, if you look through their ideological sort of tenets, those have both sides. There's a very strict adherence to both sides being important, and I think that's really something that we need to get back to. At a time that we did do this, the golden mean is what the Greeks called it. So being in the center, like we were showing that circle before, the golden mean is being between these two sides. It's like making a plane fly with one wing. It just doesn't work. And a time they did this before, we have a picture of Florence here because it's the place of the main place for the Renaissance. The Renaissance really was a time where all these ideas of the ancient Greeks were found again, and it's in these periods of transition, in which I think we're in one right now, these periods of transition where the big things really happen, where changes in ideas and world shaping ideas really come from, and where we kind of incorporate new ideas, and we haven't yet sort of denigrated the other side. This is the important time. So today I wanted to put to rest, and I know I've said it quite a bit now, this level. So this across the side. Oh yeah. Okay. So this level right here, we put this to rest. I don't want to touch again. I mean, let's do it like this. So this side, this is done. And we're going to talk about this way tomorrow. But for now, this is all we need to really do. I thank you again for joining me. Hope you found it interesting. Any ideas, anything you'd like to be further explained, please ask me in the comment section, and I'll do what I can to kind of address each of those. Well, there's not very many right now, but all the comments I'll try to give due response to if I can. Okay, thank you. Bye.